Now let's flip it over to the college football side of things, where Andy, Greg, and I will tear apart this college football card this week. And I was saying, I kind of blew my just saying thing. I was going to talk about the South Florida situation set up.
Speaking of spitting, by the way, Mark,
yes,
because that's what I was referencing before. South Florida may not even win the football game last week if the player from the Miami Hurricanes does not spit on the player from South Florida. I think they were going to have like what was that?
A University of Florida player.
Well,
the South Florida player spitting on the University of Florida player. And if it wasn't for that particular spitting incident, they would have had a longer down and distance, maybe at their own 25-yard line. And who knows that could have just completely ended South Florida's chances, but they gave him second life. They got the ball at midfield, and all they needed was a couple of plays to get into field goal range and win the game.
Greg, I'm going to have to think long and serious and hard in our playbook newsletter. We've got our awesome angle. We've got our trivia teaser. We've got our smart box. We might have to open up for the spit play of the week. Right.
Yeah. Or like Andy said, the spitting angle. What's our spitting angle this week?
Yes.
Who's South Florida, by the way, that really shouldn't even be a surprise, especially if you were watching this channel. If you paid attention to Mark's picks last week, if you paid attention to the preview show, I had South Florida overall as the second best group of 5 team coming into the season. But again, remember we talked about it. It was all rested upon them beating Boise State. They had to beat Boise State. They lost that game. It was all over. They would never have a chance to go back over Boise. They won that game. And then they just shocked everybody last week. And I think what was more shocking about the game last week was just the fact of how Florida really had nothing going offensively. You thought they would be a little bit more advanced. But DJ Lagway is just still a young quarterback that is still trying to find himself. And that Byron Brown, the kid that we talked about, that's the big primary reason why South Florida is in this position. He is a bona fide, big-time group of 5 quarterback who can, raise his level even against the best teams. So, look, it surprised me too, Mark. But it's also great to see when teams like South Florida can put these types of, starts to seasons together. Now they go to Miami this week. And I can't imagine they're going to be able to pull off a third straight win. But even if they just keep this close going into the fourth quarter, man, they are going to be hard-pressed. The committee is going to be hard-pressed to not make South Florida the group of 5 representative if South Florida does not go on to have a really good season.
Especially because, and this is a question, Mark, maybe you might have some numbers for, that was a nice upset. Boise was a ranked team that South Florida beat. You would think, even though it's Florida coming up, there would still be a natural letdown, even with the big rivalry, where you're going up against Big Brother, coming off of defeating a ranked team. I don't know how many times South Florida has done that. Now they're going to be in a situation where they did not have the letdown, and they actually pulled off the upset as a huge underdog, and now they're an even bigger underdog playing a team that is as much a rival. It's probably more of a rival because it's South Florida than the University of Florida in Miami. So I'm wondering what, if anything, there's in the database that talks about a team coming off of 2 huge upsets over ranked teams, underdogs in both of those games.
Well, I can't tag ranked teams, Andy. I can make a set and go, jab and poke at them and do just that. I just know mentally that it was only the second time I think it's happened in a long, long while. I think we wrote that in the newsletter this particular week. But what you've got here in South Florida, my goodness, when when these bowl invites go out, look at the strength of schedule that they're playing to open the season here with. My goodness, it's not only is it difficult, they're winning these games. So long, strong tip of the hat to them. And I think it'll catch up with them personally this week against Miami. What I'm liking about Miami, I'm kind of getting off my anti-Mario Cristobal
There you go.
Bandwagon here, at least for the moment. Okay.
Hey, you just need a little time.
Yeah, just a little time. A few wins, a couple of good games. Okay.
A little bit more recruiting, a little bit more, paying Carson Beck, guys like that, big money.
Yeah.
Quit making stupid decisions.
That'll help.
Carson Beck has really helped this football
or simply being bailed out by your players.
Yes, that's the whole key right there, Andy. Being bailed out by your players. And I think Miami's going to want to make a statement this week. South Florida winning that football game against Florida is going to get Miami of Florida's attention this particular week. So while I don't
Especially,
like,
by the way, especially the attention of the Miami, Florida recruiters.
and that's what the game is all about, or it always had been about. So in this day and age we're living now with the NIL and everything, recruiting doesn't carry as much weight as it did before. We're seeing that the reason Nick Saban got out of Alabama, Georgia is even beginning to regress because all of their powerful recruiting classes don't seem to mean as much here today as it will with a big booster that's got a lot of money that will go out and buy you a good football player.
In fact, that's a reason to perhaps de-emphasize the value of the recruiting class, because often those recruits may only be there for 1 year and may not see a lot of playing action that 1 year. So what good does having a number 4 recruiting class mean? I mean, you're still getting good athletes, but how many of them will be there for their sophomore season?
Well, we got a pretty good schedule on tap this week, guys. I think especially compared to last week, it was like bare bones last week as far as quality was concerned. And week 2 in college football almost always is, because we're kind of out of the first game schedule and we're ahead of week 3 and 4 where they start to get into conference play. So you're left with the scraps. We were left with the scraps last week, but we got some good games on tap this particular week. And I'm going to go to one here to kick this segment off here. The backyard brawl has been renewed. Rich Rodriguez is back at West Virginia, and a lot more is expected from this football team. They kind of like laid an egg last week, but they look like they're going to be a much better football team. Greg, how do you see Pittsburgh, West Virginia this week in the backyard brawl?
Well, that was actually one of my 2 top plays last week, was taking Ohio over West Virginia. West Virginia is just, it's going to take Rich Rod some time. He does not have the talent. He does not have the quarterback. They went into a buzzsaw last week, meaning Ohio is an awesome home dog. And they did it again. I think they've won now 5 straight games as a home dog over the last 5 or 6 years, something like that. But West Virginia's offense, when you have to step up in competition, is just not ready. And Pittsburgh's got Holstein, who's on fire again now that he's healthy, just like he was early last year. They've got Reed in the backfield, one of the more electrifying players in the ACC. So they have all the good players. West Virginia just does not have that type of talent, which is why you've seen the line move up. I mean, I think the line started like 4 or something like that. At least that's when I saw it. Now it's almost a touchdown. And so everybody's putting money on Pittsburgh, and I think for good reason. They've beaten West Virginia also 2 of the last 3 years since the rivalry has been renewed. And I think they're going to make it 3 out of 4. It's just in a rivalry game, especially, Pittsburgh's not going to look past this game. It's a big game for Pittsburgh, and there's just more talented. So I have no problem laying 6 points or whatever that is.
Andy, what do you see in this football game?
I like West Virginia. Unfortunately, I was against Greg, and I liked West Virginia last week. Just I went on on an overall roster and talent. I mean, Ohio is an outstanding. They're probably the second best team in the MAC this year, behind Toledo. So I think Miami's has some rebuilding to do, but Miami has shown in the past that they can start like 0-6 and go 6-0 down the stretches. I think they did a number of years ago. Rich Rod, of course, had great success in his first time at West Virginia, and that enabled him to get his short-lived tenure at the University of Michigan, and recruiting issues, etc., like that. West Virginia, they made the switch into the Big 12 a few years ago. Yet it's not been a terrible program. You go back to 2021, they were what were they? 6-7, 5-7, 9-4 2 years ago, 6-7. So it's not as though they had a real clunker of a season. Not that 5-7 is great, but they were bowl eligible, and I think they went to bowls in in 3 of the last 4 years. In fact, back to back as members of the Big 12 conference. So I think they can compete. This is a rivalry with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has been a disappointing team for a number of years. Last year, a little bit of an exception, as I recall. But even then, look at what Pitt did last year when they had, what was it? They started 2, 4, 6, 7-0 and didn't win a game since then. So, and that's sometimes an inability of a coach to get his team back up after adversity. Narduzzi came over. What was it? I think Michigan State defensive coordinator a number of years ago, had some spotty success with the Panthers. But you're asking a rival on the road to win by a margin, more than 7 or more points. it was the first game for Rich Rod with his team. I like to see veteran coaches when they take over another program show improvement from his first game to his next game after seeing what he has in that opening game. And I think that's a situation.
Well, I'm with you, Andy. I'm going to stay with West Virginia in the football game. It means a lot for Rich Rod to be back to the program here, as we call out in our newsletter this week. He's been very strong in games off of his first loss of the season, which he'll be bouncing back in this particular week. And Pittsburgh didn't exactly beat they basically beat the Sisters of the Poor to open up the football season. We just have to tell it like it is. They're going to be a good football team this year, but I think this rivalry will stand up and be a little bit more of what it's been in the past in this particular football game. And I think it comes down to who scores last. I'm going to give you guys a heads up here. We're going to hit two more featured football games, and we're going to close it out with, I'm going to ask you guys, who is going to be your South Florida football pick of the week this week, the team that pulls the stunner, if you will, on the football card this week. But before we do that,
by the way, how would you define a stunner? A double-digit underdog to win outright?
I would say a double-digit dog to win out. A double-digit dog to win outright. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep it just that simple. Talk about improved football teams, guys. Vanderbilt inside of the Southeast Conference. I've got Greg's attention here right now. I can tell you that.
That's my boys.
Yeah, he's been a Diego Pavia fan since the get-go. This team has done nothing but win. Clark Lee's been voted the coach of SEC Coach of the Year last football season here. What do you think of their chances?
Are you about to, Mark? Are you about to say to tell all the folks out there, go home to your mommies and tell them to bet on the commies?
The mommies and the commies. I like it. The mommies and the commies. I'll be a commie again this week. I can tell you that. I know you will too, Greg. What do you see happening here?
Yeah, and I think the obvious thing that just keeps me writing Vanderbilt, as I've said on my other shows the past couple of weeks, is that they're going to be a dog in a lot of these games until maybe they start winning these games, which I think they're going to. But they're also going to step up in more competition, and they'll still be dogs. So I think I'm just going to keep playing them on the money line every week until they can't. I guess, prove to me what I think that they're going to do, and that is have a very special season. Pavia is 13-2 against the spread as a road dog in his last 15. Might even be in his overall 15 because I have stats going back to New Mexico State days. The thing I am the most concerned with is it's the only thing I'm concerned with is just the fact that South Carolina has owned Vanderbilt. They've won 16 straight. They've covered 9 out of 10. So they've got their number. That is the one thing that I am concerned with. But other than that, South Carolina has done absolutely, for a 2-0 team, they've done nothing. Beat Virginia Tech, and they were outgained. They were outgained last week by South Carolina State. So how did they win? Well, they just have a defensive back who's now returned 3 punts for touchdowns in 2 games this year. That's right.
And by the way, who did Vanderbilt play last week? And what happened?
Virginia Tech. Yes.
And what was the score there? Did they win by like 20?
44-20. Yeah. Yes. And they outgained them by about 150, 200 yards. Yep. And it was on the road. So, yeah.
By the way, revenge for Virginia Tech, who lost at home as a double-digit favorite to Vanderbilt last year.
Yeah. And it they couldn't get past that. So, so anyway, that's why to me it's obviously a no-brainer the way I feel about Vandy, that I'm just going to keep riding them, and I'll ride them again this week, because I am kind of surprised that South Carolina's offense has really not gotten off the ground so far this year.
No, they've sputtered for sure. Andy, it sounds like you're going to be a commie this week as well.
Yeah, I'm with both of you. Not sure. Well, at this point, it could pay to play them on the money. That line's down to 3.5 now in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So the money is coming in, and at what point will they bet South Carolina? I imagine if it gets down to 3, because we take a look at recruiting and all that, and the caliber of athletes. South Carolina does rate a little bit higher, but the coach has done a great job at Vanderbilt, and of course, it has a lot to do with the transfer quarterback he got. Who really was the key to. You're talking about South Carolina dominating Vanderbilt over there. How about Alabama, who Vanderbilt beat last year? So things don't always go the way that they have in the past, and this could be one of those situations. And Vanderbilt has high admission standards. And I think that with their recent success that's continuing with the last year and so far this year, that they may be able to recruit a lot of football players who also like to go for a good education.
Well, as we call out in our newsletter in this game, this was our featured upset game of the week in our newsletter, Vanderbilt over South Carolina. The Gamecocks are just not playing up to the level they were expected to play this year. Lenora Sellers is not off to this Heisman Trophy candidate run that we've seen. They've been outyarded, as Greg mentioned, in their first 2 football games in a row. South Carolina State, are you kidding me? And we talked about Diego Pavia, 5-0 to the spread. He is with Vanderbilt as a road dog, playing extremely well in that particular role here. I think it continues for Vanderbilt this week. Put me down on the Commodores for my play. That's a 3-for-3 vote for Vanderbilt this particular week. Let's wrap it up, guys, with another featured game on tap on the college football card this week. Notre Dame is going to play host to Texas A&M. The Irish got tripped up in their first football game. Should be a lot of eyeballs on this particular game. Greg, what do you see happens here between the Irish and the Aggies?
Yeah, this is a tough one because Notre Dame, it's a big number, 6.5 right now. They've had the week off. They've had all this time to prepare since the loss to Miami. Texas A&M has played against a couple of, I mean, it's FBS competition. They're not bad teams, Utah State and UTSA, so they're not cupcakes. But they didn't blow either of them out or anything like that, which I don't think was necessary. Why show everything? You got Notre Dame coming up. They've got the angle of losing last year at home, so they've got that. It's a huge game for Marcel Reed and also for Carr, the young quarterback for Notre Dame who's looking for his first win. But Reed, big road game. This is going to really tell us whether or not Texas A&M is a true national championship contender. If Marcel Reed doesn't have to win the game, but as long as Marcel Reed can play a good game and can have Texas A&M in the fight all game long, he's gotten off to a great start. If he could do it against the Irish on the road, A&M is going to be a tough national championship contender to keep an eye on. So there's a lot of factors that point actually to me taking Texas A&M in this game, and that's what I'm going to do. I still believe Notre Dame is a better team, but they did have a little bit of rust. I guess they had to knock off in the Miami game. There were some things that did look. I mean, especially with Love, their running back, a fantastic running back. They have to get him going. They've got to run the football. They cannot be victorious against teams like Texas A&M or Miami unless they have big running games and they could balance out the offense. So look for that. But I'm going to take the points. I think it's a lot of points to be given a really good football team.
Andy, you taking or laying in this football game?
I'm laying with Notre Dame here. It's an important game for Notre Dame from the standpoint that there's a 12-team playoff. They've already lost once to a quality team, Miami, which may be the best team that Notre Dame will end up facing this year. I mean, I'm still undecided on USC, who's probably another one. And A&M is probably the second best team right now that they will face. Well, you lose back-to-back games, Notre Dame, to Texas to Miami and Texas A&M, 2 teams that certainly could be in position to make the 12-team playoff. It's going to be very, very hard for Notre Dame to be invited even with 2 losses, and that's not to say that they won't lose to a USC later on, as far as that goes, because they don't have that many chances. You look at Texas A&M, they can afford the loss as far as their long-term prospects are concerned, because they also have opportunities to beat teams like LSU, Missouri, Texas at the end of the year. And we don't even know about how Florida, of course, does not have the same luster that they had a week ago this time, because that would have been one game on their schedule that could have been looked at. Point is, A&M has a lot of opportunities, or at least a number of opportunities, to overcome 1 loss, possibly even over 2, because they're going to be playing half a dozen teams that'll be ranked at some point. Notre Dame doesn't have that luxury. Now we're talking about the point spread. Well, Notre Dame went down there last year. I do remember taking the points with or what was it? I think maybe it was laying the points with A&M last year. Notre Dame won that game by 10. First road game for Texas A&M. You've got Notre Dame rested. Greg mentioned a lot of the things, chances to adjust to the new personnel that went up against maybe the best challenge prior to a playoff game that Notre Dame will see this year. I think that how will A&M react to playing in front of that crowd at with Touchdown Jesus on the in the stadium there. I think a lot of factors for Notre Dame. I respect Texas A&M. I was disappointed in their season last year going in because I did like Elko coming over from Duke and all that, and they didn't seem to play up to their roster potential for a good part of the season. So I'm on Notre Dame this week, and I think they're probably going to get another. I'm going to say 8 to 13 point win.
Okay, I'm going to break the tie and go with Greg and the Aggies in this football game, largely because of what we write in the Playbook newsletter. Last week we talked about how teams that were bowl teams last year that open up the season with a loss and how they tend to struggle in game 2, especially in the role of a favorite. Now, I know there's a week of rest here for Notre Dame to kind of pattern that out or even that stat out, per se, if you will. But, and Andy brings out a good point. The Irish, can they go 0-2 and still be a factor? I mean, they might be off the radar, the Irish, if they go 0-2 to open this football game. But my point here is that, number one, they are a bowl or blues situation. Number two, they can win this game, but they don't have to win by 7 points. I think this game is going to be a fiercely fought contest. Perhaps comes down to who scores last. And when it comes to who scores last, I'm almost always in the dog, especially if we're talking.
I'm going to ask you one sort of related question to that. What would you say? Bowl teams coming off losses or something? Was that what it was?
Yes.
Okay.
In game 1.
Okay, in game 1. What if that loss that you're referring to was a national championship game, whether it be under the 12-team format last year or the 4-team format for the years before? If the team that lost, like I don't remember what TCU did in that year, their opening game, if they won or lost that opening game after being blown out by Georgia. But we've had a probably 10, 15-year sample of quote unquote championship games, though not necessarily the way that we now will have it with more than a 14 playoff. But I'm just curious if we treat a championship game loss as different.
Well, I'm not counting that loss in their championship game. I'm counting Notre Dame's first loss of the season here this year in game 1. Okay, when they tripped up and stubbed their toe, and this really tightens up much stronger when they come favored in game 2.
No, what I meant was not so much that Notre Dame lost, although they did, but what of a bowl team that played but lost. Well, no, because
if they lost like in the championship game,
and then opened the following season with a loss.
Well, that's a good question. Again, something I cannot do specifically other than tagging the game. But I do know that yes, they were a bowl team last year, and they opened up with the loss.
National runner-up, yeah.
Yes, and their favorite.
Look at that TCU situation right now. It may not apply because TCU may have won that game.
2 trends from the Playbook magazine that favors either team. The one that favors Notre Dame, they're 9-3 against the spread. Their last 12 as a home favorite, while Texas A&M is just 1-7-1 against the spread in their last 9 as a road dog. But the one that favors Texas A&M, and this is definitely a Playbook special, the Aggies have won the last game 3s 11 straight times. And they've been a dog twice. So when you get to game 3 of the season, the last 11 years for Texas A&M, they've won all 11, and they've been a dog twice during that span. So whatever that means, whatever kind of mystic forces you're dealing with here, if you want to go that route, then take Texas A&M because they just love winning game 3s.
I have a question along those lines for you, Mark, and that is, how long do you go back as far as how much when you have a coaching change? Like, for example, A&M just changed coaches, yet they have that remarkable record. Do you place any emphasis on the fact that it's a different coach, or do you not really pay attention to it unless that new coach continues to follow that situation? So you could say over the last 8 years under 2 different coaches, this team has always won in such and such a.
Well, that's a great question. It's probably a subject all unto its own. If we're doing handicapping 101, we're talking about if you follow coaches, you follow them exclusively. So if a team does make a coaching change, are you going to follow their pattern, or are you going to look at this football team for who they are with their new coach? So that's an argument to be made and had. But in cases like programs where you're talking big programs like Notre Dame, big Power 4 conferences, the athletes are the guys that usually do all the speaking because they recruit as well as anybody does, as anybody else in the country. So I didn't look at this football game.
You're also having coaches having longer tenures in most cases at the elite programs, unless you move from one elite program to another. So I mean, you're used to seeing coaches play 8 to 10. You look at like say 19 years and coaches of that ilk.
Exactly. Well, Andy, let me
Ference of
wrap up
Iowa,
the
for example.
show. I'm going to wrap up the show with you. We're going to ask who your big upset of the week could possibly be. If there's any money line double-digit dog you might be possibly thinking about this week, who would it be?
I can't really find a double-digit upset dog. I mean, the closest that comes, and I can't really see them winning the game, but it's not a great situation, would be Stanford, a 12.5-point home underdog to Boston College, who just played that double overtime game at Michigan State last Saturday night. So that's one possible. But if you want, let's say, a priced underdog that could pull the upset, how about Arkansas going in and beating Ole Miss?
I agree with that. And I think the Hogs are right this week. The Hogs are a live dog this week, and they could pull that upset. Greg, who are you looking at on your money line value play, your big double-digit dog to win the whole game?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Andy, on that one. I think Arkansas is ripe for that upset. So I don't know what it is now, 8 points, something like that. So whatever it is, here it is 7. So it's gone down even to 7. But yeah, really like Arkansas in that spot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a team. Mark talked about this team as his upset pick last week. It was only 4 points, and it was against the group of 5 team. But I'm going to go ahead and double down on the same team now as a 15-point dog against a defending conference champion team from the Power 4, and that is Texas State against Arizona State. So the line is now 15.5 plus 550 on the money line. And just keep this in mind. Keep this perspective. Texas State played Arizona State last year, beginning of the season. Texas State was favored in the game by 2 points, something like that, 2 points.
Good
it was
point.
a close game. And that went, and Texas State actually had the lead by double digits and lost the game. So now, all of a sudden, one season later, and Texas State had a good season last year too. Now, just because they're on the road, they're getting 15.5 points. Plus, keep this in mind too, Arizona State has not gotten off to a good start this year. They had a lackluster FCS opponent week 1. It wasn't really a blowout, and it wasn't really a sexy win. But then Mississippi State, they trailed 17-0 in the game, came back, took the lead with a minute and a half left, and then gave up the game-winning touchdown of like 55 yards with 30 seconds to go to lose the game. And Sam Levitt, the quarterback, is really not off to a good start. He's got an average, he's got his ratio touchdown interception at 3.3. His average yard completion is only 5.6. So their passing game, even though they have Tyson, one of the best receivers in the nation, just not humming right now, even though the running game has been okay without Scadaboo. So they're a little off early on in the season. They'll be fine. But I think that's why this is a spot where they can be taken advantage of because, as you know, Mark, G.J. Kinney's done a great job with Texas State. And this is the type of win that could really get him noticed that next year, as you said last week, next year he probably will be somewhere else.
I do think that Texas State is a good point spread play this week. Arizona State, this is their final non-conference game. They begin their 9-game Big 12 slate next week at Baylor. They may take the field saying we need to work on a few things to get prepared. I don't know that they need to win by a margin, but I wouldn't. I'll be rooting for Greg to get his money line playing, but I will be on Texas State plus the 14.5.
Well, Greg, I'm putting you down for Texas State because we did ask for a double-digit dog, and I agree with you 100%. They've done nothing wrong this year, Texas State. They're 2-0 right out of the gate, out of the box. As you mentioned here, G.J. Kinney probably playing for a Power 4 conference job somewhere. They went on the road, and they beat UTSA, Texas San Antonio, as a dog. I think they can do it again this week against Arizona State. But my upset special, my double-digit upset special dog, I'm going to stay with the Purdue Boilermakers to pull the wood out of Southern Cal this week, okay? Yeah, Southern Cal, this big, monstrous machine that started the football season, come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, another big win or two by this football program, and they're going to be considered to be a favorite to win the Big Ten Conference. That's Lincoln Riley, and that's the way he does things. But take a close look at Purdue here, guys. Number one, new head coach Barry Odom. We all know about Barry Odom and his success that he's had with football programs in the past. The guy simply wins, and he simply wins money in football games. And number two, he's doing that again this year. And number two, again, from the Playbook newsletter, our smart box this week is a feature we call Tripping Up. And what it involves are college football teams that open up the season 2-0, and they find themselves favored in game 3 in a conference game on the road. These teams are 9-33 against the spread. 9-33 against the spread. That's Southern Cal when they go into Purdue this week, a team I don't think they're going to be all geeked up to play. Give me Purdue plus the mountain of points in that upset special.
850 right now on the money line. And if you just want to take the points, just like you said with that trend, Mark,
yes.
Keep this in mind. USC under Lincoln Riley, 3-11 against the spread is a road favorite.
There you go. He fits
I
the
don't think
pattern.
Lincoln Riley has too many positive point spread trends since he's gone to SC.
No, he doesn't.
He's been very disappointing out there.
Yeah, he hasn't earned his private jet rights
Yeah.
since he signed that contract. I'm certain of that.